Hello, my name is Joshua. I was born and raised in Nordsjælland in Denmark, and I just spent 4 years living in the United States, in New Haven, Connecticut, where I was studying ethics, politics, and economics with a focus on public health at Yale University, also with a brief stint in the United Kingdom where I studied abroad for a semester. So what turned out to be my dream course, and the one that I've been really happy to pursue, ethics, politics, and economics, was actually not the thing I thought I would be studying when I arrived at Yale. I arrived wanting to major in psychology, and that's what I wrote about in my application. But I think just the exposure to other courses, taking my first philosophy courses, taking my first economics courses, and maybe also just learning more about psychology and what it could and could not be used for, kind of created a very natural transition into something else. And then when I started to focus more on public health within my, ethics, politics, and economics degree, I think I was really motivated by all the different applications for making a tangible change in the world that could be, learned through public health and related disciplines. And so that's kind of what inspired me and motivated me for the rest of my degree. Yeah, so a lot of American undergraduate programs are what's called liberal arts programs. So that's not all programs, but quite a few of them. And there's a big difference between that, the liberal arts approach, and what you find in Denmark, in that, as I mentioned, what I started out studying was not what I wound up studying. So there's a lot more flexibility to move around between different disciplines in the first couple of years. And there's also, I think, a lot more scope to do interdisciplinary work. So as I mentioned, I did, economics, but I also have taken courses in biology and statistics and philosophy. And the upside of that is that it's really exciting to be able to see how different disciplines communicate together. So right now I'm actually doing some research with a biologist, and we're taking my background in economics and his background in biology and thinking about vaccine development as seen through both those lenses. So that's really exciting being able to do that. The downside, of course, is that you don't go as much in depth. So I don't know nearly as much about economics as people who study 3 years of economics at the University of Copenhagen. So between September that year and December, which is quite short timeline, I found out, what is an SAT, what are these essays I have to do. Fortunately, because I was taking a gap year, I had the time to kind of dive into that application process. And I actually applied both in the UK, to one university, the University of Cambridge, and then to a handful of universities in the US during that 3-month period. And then was so fortunate that I wound up with having to make a decision between going to the US and the UK, which was really difficult, but I ultimately wound up going to the US. Start earlier, so I had to take out a lot of time during those 4 months to kind of rush through this very compressed timeline. And I think if you're applying for the US, the process is quite extensive. So if you can spread that out over a whole year, that lowers some of the stress. And then as you're going through it, I think also think about why it is you're applying, what it means, and also what it doesn't mean. So I think it's easy to, if you're applying for one of these very prestigious universities, to tie up a lot of ideas of success to getting into that university. And, obviously, that is a success in a sense, but I think it's also important to think about, well, why are you doing it? Why is it you want to do it? And could you do those things, if you decide to ultimately stay in Denmark or stay wherever you are? Honestly, a big thing is also looking at the financial aid available at the schools. So I was really fortunate that Yale paid for most of my studies, and that's based on the financial situation of your family. So most private universities in the US are extremely expensive, and it's not everyone who can afford that. And so it would be a real shame to apply for a dream school only to find out afterwards that you actually can't afford it. So I would definitely say, unfortunately, unlike in Denmark, part of choosing the right school in the US would also be looking at what is the financial aid policy of the different schools, and how does that match onto your or your family's financial situation?